On First at 9 this Friday, the 19th of December 2025. Rain check. Continued rainfall until December 22nd, says the Met. New landslides reported in Ududumbara. No fatalities due to prompt evacuations. Green light. Parliament and the Committee on Public Finance approved the 500 billion rupees supplementary estimate. Bitter pills. Controversial ondansetron vaccine causing more complications, says the GMOA. Rolling deep. The government's Rebuilding Sri Lanka fund gathers 4.2 billion rupees.
Kalin baby soap rupial 90කට. Kalin baby podi හැමෝටමයි.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9 on the Derana News channel. I'm Aditya Singh joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world, brought to you by the only Sri Lankan media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms, recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. Now, in a top story tonight, the Department of Meteorology notes that the prevalent incessant rains are expected to subside after the 22nd of December. Meanwhile, 2 landslides were reported across 2 areas within the Ududumbara area yesterday in the wake of downpours prompted by the northeast monsoons. 34 reservoirs across the island continue to release excess water over the prevailing rains.
Many areas across the island continue to receive heavy rainfall with the activation of the northeast monsoons. The Ududumbara area of the Kandy district received the highest rainfall of 201.4 millimeters in the 24 hours leading up to 6 am today. Poppiti of the Dumbaragama within the Kandy district received rainfall of 155 millimeters, while Kaikavala and Nugatala received 145 and 137 millimeters of rainfall respectively. The Department of Meteorology confirmed that Pallevela, Hunugalwata and Madamanuara received rainfall exceeding 100 millimeters. This is how Dumbara was seen yesterday.
Red evacuation notices have been issued to the Doluwa, Ududumbara, Minipe and Medadumbara Divisional Secretariat divisions within the Kandy district. Red evacuation notices have also been issued to Mathurata, Nildanda Hinna, Haguranketa and the Walapane Divisional Secretariat divisions within the Nuwara district. Heavy rainfall exceeding 100 millimeters have been reported in the Matale district. Soil saturation levels are high as a result of persistent downpours that occurred yesterday and the day before. Early indications of landslides have been observed in several areas.
2 landslides were reported out of Ududumbara yesterday. One of those landslides occurred in the Nugagala area of Hunaskirya last afternoon. 3 residences were destroyed by the devastating erosion. As a result of prompt evacuations elicited by pertinent notices, no fatalities were reported. However, the Derana correspondent in the region confirmed that 1 individual sustained injuries. The other landslide within Ududumbara was reported in Liangolla. Despite the devastation caused, no lives were harmed since all affected residents heeded calls by the authorities to evacuate the area when early signs of landslides were first observed. The Pallevela Bridge in Ududumbara joined a long list of key infrastructure that sustained tremendous damage in the wake of Cyclone Ditwa. For the convenience of all commuters who used the bridge, a makeshift bridge was constructed by the youth in the area using sandbags as a temporary solution. However, recent rains washed away the makeshift bridge as well. The Sinanagavilua area of Vanathavilua, which was inundated on the 27th of November, still remains submerged by floodwaters. This area has been inundated for over 20 days. 23 residences, a Catholic church and a preschool in the area are still under floodwater, while residents have been temporarily relocated to a safety centre in the vicinity.
People who sought refuge at safety centres are gradually moving out with the floodwaters receding. Since the threat of floods loom over us again, all those who have moved out of safety centres can move back in if the situation deems it necessary. Plans are underway to construct homes for those who have been evacuated from areas at risk. Discussions with the National Housing Development Authority are ongoing. The government is of the view that residents who initially occupied areas prone to disaster must not be allowed to set up homes in the same areas again. The government toils hard to guarantee public safety.
As rainfall continues to persist, 34 major reservoirs and tanks continue to dispatch excess water. Spill gates of the Kalawewa, Rajangania, Nachaduwa and Angamu reservoirs continue to remain open. One of the 5 spill gates of the Moragahakanda reservoir in Polonnaruwa was opened to release excess water last night. The spill gate reportedly dispatches 1,500 cubic feet of water from the Moragahakanda reservoir to the Amban River. Meanwhile, the Polgola Dam, Victoria Dam, Randaligana Dam and the Rantambe Dam, all located within the Kandy district, continue to release excess water. Spill gates of the Dadaruwa reservoir, the Senanayaka Samudra and the Kantale reservoir have also been opened. Water released by the Konduwatuwana reservoir inundated the Ampara Inginiagala road. A minor flood was reported from Manampitiya after water levels of the Mahaveli river increased last afternoon. The Department of Irrigation noted that the minor flood level is currently receding.
The other river systems pose no threat, with the Malwatu River and the lower region of the Mahaveli River being the only 2 exceptions. There is no significant rapid increase of water levels in those 2 rivers as well. Weather forecasts predict continued rainfall over the next few days. Given that scenario, the opening of spill gates and the consequent release of water may change over time. We urge the general public to remain vigilant.
Meanwhile, in its weather forecast for tomorrow, the Department of Meteorology notes that it expects several spells of showers to occur in the eastern, over and central provinces as well as in the Polonnaruwa and Hambantota districts. The Met Department went on to note that showers or thunder showers may occur at a few places in western and Sabaragama provinces and in Gaul and Mathura districts after 1 p.m. tomorrow.
Recent rains were prompted by undulating wind flows to the east of the island. We are currently observing a slight change of those wind patterns. Therefore, reduction in rainfall could be expected over the coming days. We expect the overall inclement weather to continue until the 22nd of December. However, we don't expect heavy rainfall to persist.
The 30% discount on Apico Farm and Spring mattresses available at Apico Supercenter and Apico Daily.
Now, while Sri Lankans are recovering from the sudden disaster, several areas across the country continue to face Ditwa's devastating after effects. One such area is the Munrovia estate in Tulhiria, where 20 residents went missing following landslides that occurred on November 28th. 20 members of 6 families residing in the area, including children, went missing as a result of the incident. Residents and family members who visited the disaster-struck area said that no officials or political authorities had taken necessary action in response to the incident till now. During a visit to the area, Valakapala Pradesha Sabha member Jayanta Rajapaksa stated that the National Building Research Organisation has yet to make a definitive decision regarding residents living in landslide-prone areas. Now in other news, the Committee on Public Finance approved a 500 billion rupee supplementary estimate to restore livelihoods and infrastructure damaged by the recent disaster situation. In the meantime, Treasury Secretary Dr. Harshana Surya Perum announced that the Rebuilding Sri Lanka Fund, established by the government to provide relief to those affected by the recent disasters caused by Cyclone Ditwa, received a total of 4.2 billion rupees to date.
The supplementary estimate of 500 billion rupees was referred to the Committee of Public Finance for approval yesterday. The government claims it intends to restore the livelihoods of those affected by Cyclone Ditwa using the 500 billion rupees under COPF review.
රුපියල් බිලියන 500කට අදාළ පරිපූර්ණ කැස්තමේන්තුව තමයි ද ඉදිරිපත් කිරීමට අපේක්ෂා කරන්නේ. 2026 සම්මත වෙච්ච අයවැයට පරිපාහිරව ඉදිරිපත් කරන පරිපූර්ණ කැස්තමේන්තුවක් වෙනවා. 500 තනිකරම අපි යූස් කරන්නේ.
The 500 billion rupees will be set aside through an excess cash buffer. These proceeds worth 500 billion rupees amount to around 1.5% of Sri Lanka's GDP. Therefore, we can expect a 1.5% hike in government expenditure. Its impact will be limited to 2026. The impact will not last long. We can recover the amount promptly.
500 billion the total අපේ loss එක ඉස්සරහට යනකොට අපි fund කරන්න ඕනේ මේ Ditwa disaster එක නිසා
500 billion විතරයි.
ඔව් මම දැක්කා disaster.
I recently saw the Commissioner General of Essential Services claiming that Cyclone Ditwa set Sri Lanka back by about 6% to 7% of GDP. However, it appears that the real loss sustained is about 1.5% of GDP. We have already channeled funds worth 500 billion rupees from the savings of other ministries to finance these initiatives. Meanwhile, about 25 billion rupees in budget department savings were utilized as well. We expect to spend 75 billion rupees in disaster relief within this year. Furthermore, next year we expect to utilize 500 billion rupees approved through supplementary estimates. We will also rearrange existing provisions to make room for an expenditure of 100 billion rupees next year. We expect disaster-related expenditure to reach 600 billion rupees by next year. Therefore, 675 billion rupees will be spent for disaster relief within this year and the next. We expect a requirement of about 350 billion rupees to fund relief by 2027 and 2028. The government intended to fund a heap of capital expenditures including for health and education. Does this mean that the government intends to cut costs there and to make room here?
Rebuilding Sri Lanka කියලා වෙනම ෆන්ඩ් එකක් හදනවා. ඒකට ලොකු කැපිටල් එකක් එනවා. ඒක තමයි රජයේ විදියට ඇත්තටම බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. ඒ ෆන්ඩ් එක හරහා වෙනමම කොටස් 7කට බෙදලා ඒ ඩෙවලොප්මන්ට් යන්න තමයි වෙනම බලාපොරොත්තු.
මේ රීබිල්ඩින් ෆන්ඩ් එක ගැන කරුවා මන්ත්‍රීතුමා අමතුමා සඳහන් කරපු නිසා කවදාද රීබිල්ඩින් ෆන්ඩ් එක නීතිගත කරන්න පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට ඉදිරිපත් කරන්නේ? මොකද මේක රීබිල්ඩින් ශ්‍රී ලංකා කියලා ෆන්ඩ් එකක් දැනට නැහැ.
ඔව් දැනට ඒක ජනාධිපති ලේකම් කාර්යාලයෙන් තමයි සභාපතිතුමා ඒක ඒ අදාළ වැඩ කටයුතු කරන්නේ. දින වකවානුව සම්බන්ධයෙන් කියන්න අමාරුයි.
මම යෝජනා කරනවා අනිත් සභිකයන්ගේ අනුමැතිය සහිතව ඊළඟ පාර්ලිමේන්තු සැසිවාරයේදීම මේක සම්මත කරගන්න මේ උත්සාහ කරා.
Subsequently, COPF Chairman Dr. Harsha De Silva declared the supplementary estimate approved by the Committee of Public Finance.
So then officially the Committee on Public Finance will approve supplementary estimate of LKR 500 billion, but make sure that we say that under the PFM Act there are certain legal conditions that need to be adhered to before we break the legally set limit of 13%.
Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma provided an update on the government's Rebuilding Sri Lanka Fund.
On behalf of the Government of Sri Lanka, Ministry of Finance is grateful for the support and assistance. We are happy to share that as of today, the total amount received is 4,286 million rupees, which comprises of deposits of 4,263 million, direct deposits into the bank accounts, as well as 23 million received in foreign currencies, signifying a total of 4.2 billion rupees, and the equivalent amount in US dollars is 13.86 million US dollars, whereas the amount received in foreign currencies itself has exceeded $6 million.
Meanwhile, ministers today revealed the heavy toll of the recent disaster on Sri Lanka's plantation and industrial sectors, with major losses reported in the tea, coconut and rubber industries. Concerns were raised over slow relief claims and protests erupted in Puttalam over unpaid government allowances.
The Minister of Plantations and Community Infrastructure, Samantha Widyarathna, held a press conference today to brief the media on the impact of the recent disaster on the country's plantation sector.
In the tea sector, damage has been reported to 1,567 hectares of tea lands. In addition, 85 tea factories have been affected along with 23 warehouses storing finished tea leaves. It is reported that approximately 5 million kilograms of finished tea leaves have been damaged, which will negatively impact the export sector. In the coconut sector, 15,200 coconut trees and 19,200 coconut plants have been affected. In the rubber sector, more than 78 hectares of rubber plantations have been damaged.
At a function in Colombo today, Minister of Industries and Entrepreneurship Development Sunil Handunetti announced that approximately 29,000 industrialists affected by the disaster have registered to receive financial assistance.
It is disappointing to say this, but even after facing a disaster, we still have to urge businessmen and entrepreneurs to come forward to claim the 200,000 rupee compensation. Yet many still refuse. Up until yesterday, only 29,000 people have registered. Why aren't they registering themselves? They fear taxation. They are wary of a tax file being opened in their name. We requested them to at least register for disaster relief, and even then, they are hesitant due to the fear of tax investigations. As of today, 1 billion rupees have been allocated by the Ministry of Finance, and today we received a call informing us that another billion is ready to be disbursed. Rebuilding Sri Lanka is not just a project that can stagnate. We assure you, we will bring the country to an even better place than before.
Meanwhile, a protest erupted at Veppamudu Junction in Puttalam. Protesters claim that they have not received the 25,000 rupees government allowance so far.
30% discount on Apico Form and Spring mattresses, available at Apico Supercenter and Apico Daily.
Musa Phoenix Natal Fiesta November 13 සිට 16 දක්වා අනුරාධපුර
ස්පුට්නික් ක්‍රීඩාපිටියේදී. වසරකට ළමුන් 22000කගේ පාසල් ගමන මග නවතිනවා.
එවන් දරුවන් නැවත පාසල් යවන්න අභ්‍යාස පොත් පරිත්‍යාග කරන්න. සෑම පොතකටම ඇට්ලස් පොතක් අපෙන්.
Welcome back. Now in other news, the 500 billion rupees supplementary estimate aimed at restoring the livelihoods of those affected by the recent weather disaster was approved in Parliament today without a vote. President Derana, participating in the debate, stated that the current supplementary estimate will not result in any loss to the country's economy. Pursuant to the latest constitutional amendments, fundamental rights in Sri Lanka primarily include political and civil rights. 2 people have succumbed after being administered the ondansetron vaccine. I would like to know what measures will be taken in this regard. Today we learned that Dr. Rukshan Bellana has been suspended from duty amid fears that he may reveal corruption and misconduct in the health sector to the media. Who will protect the rights of the 2 women who died after receiving the vaccine? What is the government's response to this?
විමර්ශනයක් මේ වෙලාවේ යනවා. ඒ නිසා විමර්ශනයේ කරුණු තහවුරු වෙනකන් මම හිතන්නේ ඒ පිළිබඳ මම කරුණු ඉදිරිපත් කිරීමෙන් වැළකී සිටීම තමයි විමර්ශනයේ හරියට වෙන එකටත් සුදුසු වෙන්නේ.
යටිතල පහසුකම් නැවත ප්‍රතිස්ථාපනය කිරීම සඳහා අවශ්‍ය වන ප්‍රතිපාදන වෙන් කර ගැනීම තමයි අද දවසේ අපි මේ ඉදිරිපත් කරන ඒ පරිපූර්ණක ඇස්තිමේන්තුවේ තියෙන බලාපොරොත්තුව.
යහපාලන ආණ්ඩුවේ නියෝජ්‍ය කතානායකතුමනි.
I want to thank MP Ravi Karnanayaka for establishing an insurance scheme to compensate for damage caused by natural disasters through the National Insurance Trust Fund. 1.5 billion rupees were paid to fund the scheme. During that period, we compensated all damages caused by natural disasters. They suspended all similar insurance schemes and did not fund the insurance. If that insurance scheme was still active today, the government would not need to submit a supplementary estimate. The damage would have been covered by the insurance scheme.
එනම් මේ වගේ පරිපූර්ණක ඇස්තිමේන්තු ගේන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. රක්ෂණය මගින් මුදල් ගෙවනවා. සමහර අය කාලකන්ණි සතුටක් භුක්ති විඳින්න හිටියා.
Some fear that we may have to import food over a potential food shortage. We wish to assert that that will not happen. Paddy fields that were not affected by the disaster are still ready for cultivation this Maha season, and the harvest is yet to be reaped. There will be no shortage of rice or food, and we will ensure that such a shortage does not occur.
ඒ හැකියක් එන්න ඉඩ තබන්නේද නැත. දැන් ඊළඟට ගරු සභාපතිතුමනි දැන් ආයතන කීපයක් රැස් වුණා.
Since the 17th of November, several institutions, including the Disaster Management Center, the National Building Research Organization, the Irrigation Department, the Department of Meteorology, the Ceylon Electricity Board, the National Water Supply and Drainage Board, and the Ministry of Fisheries have convened meetings both physically and via Zoom until the 27th of November. Did they not discuss the upcoming situation? Were these officials not aware of the impending disaster? They convened because a disaster was approaching. What decisions were taken during these discussions? Were they communicated to higher authorities, and was the president informed? I personally verify and take full responsibility when I say the Indian Meteorological Department updated our Department of Meteorology every 12 hours. However, Nalinda Jayatissa claimed to the media that the reports of the Indian Express were untrue. I would like to ask Nalinda Jayatissa if the government corrected the Indian Express. If so, the relevant letter should be tabled in Parliament. The minister also stated that the Met Department did not refer to the cyclone as Ditwa. It doesn't matter what the cyclone was called. It could have been called Ditwa, Ranwala or Ranjan Jailal. The cyclone was forecast, yet the government failed to act.
ඒකනේ කිව්වේ නම වැඩක් නැහනේ. ඒතර ඒක තේරුම් ගන්න බැරි වුණා. කනගාටුයි මේ වගේ විපක්ෂයක් මේක විපක්ෂයට විනාශකාරී විපක්ෂයක්.
It is indeed disappointing to see such a destructive opposition. This is what brings destruction upon the country. I believed that the opposition would change its stance, at least in the wake of this disaster. I expected the opposition to help the government recognize its mistakes in a subtle manner. Is that what is happening right now? They are always attempting to fulfill petty political agendas.
මේක ඇතුලේ පටු පෞද්ගලික දේශපාලන උවමනාවන් ඉටු කරගන්න.
Rebuilding Sri Lanka fund කියලා එකක් ඔයගොල්ලෝ කතා කරාට එහෙම එකක් නැහැ.
You all speak of a rebuilding Sri Lanka fund. However, such a fund does not exist. I make this statement once again as the chairman of the Public Finance Committee. I also wrote a letter addressed to the President yesterday. Kindly table a proposal in Parliament for approval and establish a proper rebuilding Sri Lanka fund. What is in news right now is the bank account of the Deputy Treasury Secretary, and that is completely fine. However, it cannot be termed as the Rebuilding Sri Lanka Fund.
ඒකේ වැරද්දක් නැහැ. නමුත් ඒක රීබිල්ඩින් ශ්‍රී ලංකා ෆන්ඩ් එක නෙමෙයි.
මම හිතන්නේ මෑත ඉතිහාසයේ අපි ඉදිරිපත් කරනු ලබන විශාලතම
We have presented to Parliament the largest supplementary estimate in recent history. I am aware that there are discussions on the economy collapsing in April next year in line with this 500 billion rupees supplementary estimate. However, we are a government which worked towards a fixed goal with financial discipline. The balance of the Treasury account stands at 1,202 billion rupees as at November 2025. This is an important factor for our economy. If we had not recorded such reserves, we would not have been able to set aside 500 billion rupees. We have set aside 500 billion rupees while ensuring that we don't exceed our debt limits. This is very important. We believe that 1.2 trillion rupees in reserves should be used to provide relief to the public. Now, on the matter of the 500 billion rupees, we are aware that every rupee spent has an impact on the exchange rate of the country. Therefore, we are aware that the demand for the dollar will increase when 500 billion rupees enter the market afresh. We must understand this. This demand must be monitored in order to generate additional revenue in dollars exceeding the expected income in dollars. If not, it would impact the exchange rates. This is why we expect an RFI of $200 million from the IMF. The IMF board is set to convene regarding this matter today. I believe the IMF will provide us with the support. We also expect support from the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank. Accordingly, we have made a plan with regard to the allocation of funds. We decided that cultivation should recommence immediately. We have provided necessary relief for cultivation. In addition, we have also decided to compensate damage caused to pepper, cardamom and coffee cultivations. Matters concerning animal husbandry is another major issue. A compensation package of 200,000 rupees will be provided per each deceased hybrid cow. This allowance will be provided up to 10 deceased cows. An allowance of 50,000 rupees will be provided per each deceased local cow. This allowance will be provided to up to 20 deceased local cattle. We have also made plans to compensate damage caused to swine farms and also sheep and goat farms. An allowance of 20,000 rupees will be provided per deceased animal, while the allowance will be provided for up to 20 animals. With regard to poultry management, an allowance of 500 rupees will be provided per each deceased layer chicken. This allowance will be provided up to 2,000 chickens. 250 rupees will be provided as compensation for each deceased broiler chicken, while the allowance will be provided for up to 4,000 chickens. Considering the freshwater fishing industry, we were able to uncover that boats used within the industry must be insured. However, we are aware that many engaged in the industry undervalue their boats when obtaining insurance coverage. We have decided to provide all insurance funds to the Sino Foundation, which will supply new boats. A boat in general would cost around 450,000 rupees to 500,000 rupees. Considering the marine freshwater industry, compensation of 100,000 rupees will be provided for every damaged canoe. The cyclone caused significant damage to commercial buildings. Such individuals possessing residences and commercial buildings must be compensated adequately. Compensation should be provided to reconstruct commercial buildings. We decided to provide compensation of 500,000 rupees to each building that sustained partial damage without conducting any damage assessment. Building owners who, in their understanding, would need over 500,000 rupees as compensation are capable of requesting the government to conduct a damage assessment of the building. However, this is not valid for building owners who accept the 500,000 rupee allowance. Compensation of up to 5 million rupees will be provided following the damage assessment.
එයාට අපි තක්සේරු කරාට පසුව ලක්ෂ 50 දක්වා ලබා දෙන්න තීරණය කළා තිබෙනවා.
What MP Ravi Karunanayake has highlighted is correct. A defined timeline is essential. However, once an announcement is made today, it would not be fair to question recipients if they do not receive the assistance by Monday. Every district has a district disaster management committee and a divisional disaster management committee. All relevant officials attend these meetings and members can raise their concerns there. I would like to draw attention to the housing situation. A total of 6,228 houses have been completely damaged. In addition, 4,543 houses that were partially damaged have not been approved by the NBRO, while 6,877 houses that were not damaged have also not received NBRO approval. This brings the total to 17,648 houses. There are also houses built in areas previously identified as high risk, which were not affected by landslides during the recent disaster. Our objective is to relocate all such households to safer locations, and this process will be carried out in phases. Accordingly, residents of the 17,648 houses across all three categories in landslide affected areas will be granted 5 million rupees each.
Now,
former Speaker of Parliament Asoka Ranwala, through his legal counsel, informed court today that he is willing to offer compassionate allowance to those injured in the recent motor traffic accident caused by Ranwala himself. However, the injured parties declined the offer of financial compensation.
The case filed against former Speaker of Parliament and MP of the National People's Power, Ashoka Ranwala, whose SUV collided with a car and motorcycle in Sapagaskanda on December 11th, was called before Mahara Additional Magistrate Bandara Ilangasinghe today. Although the suspect MP Ranwala did not appear in court, his legal team presented medical reports confirming that he is currently receiving treatment at Ward 76 of the accident ward at the National Hospital, Colombo. Considering the submissions made by the Defence Counsel, the magistrate inquired into the nature of injuries sustained by all those involved in the accident. Responding to the magistrate's query, investigating officers of the Sapagaskanda police reported that the woman in the car was severely injured with her leg broken below the knee. Subsequently, Attorney at Law Akalanka Ukwatta, representing Ranwala, stated that his client is receiving medical treatment and that surgery is not required at the time. Further, the Sapagaskanda police informed court that blood samples taken from Ranwala at the hospital after the accident have been handed over to the Government Analysts Department. The police, however, revealed that they are still waiting on the government analyst to submit the report on the suspect's blood alcohol level. The police also revealed that brakes of the vehicle driven by Ranwala were malfunctioning at the time due to poor maintenance. However, Defence Counsel Ukwatta raised concerns claiming that the investigations was focusing solely on his client's role in the incident, despite two other drivers also being involved. He also called for probes into the drivers of the motorcycle and the car. Subsequently, Attorney at Law Ukwatta presented in court a compassionate allowance of 50,000 rupees to the woman still hospitalized and another worth 25,000 rupees each to the child and mother who had been discharged from the hospital. However, the husband of the female victim still in hospital declined the offer. After considering submissions made, Additional Magistrate Ilangasinghe ordered the temporary suspension of Ranwala's driver's license. He also directed the MP to undergo a physical and mental fitness test at the National Transport Medical Institute after being discharged from hospital. The case was later refixed for the 16th of January. However, later today, the Government Analysts Department stated there is no confirmed evidence that Member of Parliament and former Speaker Ashoka Ranwala was under the influence of alcohol at the time of the car accident. The department stated that laboratory analysis of blood and urine samples did not indicate alcohol consumption.
Welcome back. Now in other local news, the Government Medical Officers Association claims that several patients at the Sri Jayawardhanapura General Hospital who received the controversial ondansetron vaccine have developed complications. In light of these developments, trade unions and public representatives said that the Cabinet of Ministers, including the Minister of Health, cannot be absolved from the responsibility of importing the questionable vaccine.
According to the website of the Medical Supplies Division, over 90 incidents of quality failures have been confirmed within this year alone. The most recent incident involves bacterial contamination in the ondansetron vaccine. What actions did the government take while this medicine made its way into Sri Lanka? In addition, 9 other medicines manufactured by the same company have been banned. Names of politicians and their family members have been linked to these incidents. The medicines mafia is akin to an octopus with its tentacles reaching across multiple sectors. What has continued for the past 76 years is now repeating once again. This is a matter of collective responsibility. No one can pin the blame on one official and absolve themselves of all guilt. The Cabinet of Ministers was held responsible for the shortage of immunoglobulin as well. We have received information that several patients at the Sri Jayawardhanapura Hospital who were administered this vaccine have developed complications. The issues were identified in the last 4 batches which were imported in September. These controversial batches entered the country after the signing of the relevant agreements. When Nalinda Jayatissa was in the opposition and when he commented on Keheliya Ramukwella's case, he stated that such incidents should not be viewed in isolation but as part of a broader picture. We would like to remind Nalinda Jayatissa of his own words. This ondansetron issue should be considered an early warning.
ඇමතිවරයෙක් වෙන්න කලින් ප්‍රකාශ කරපු විදියටම යලි යලිත් සිදුවෙන්නේ මේ ප්‍රශ්නට පැහැදිලි විසඳුමක් දෙන එකක් නෙවෙයි.
වගකීමෙන් කියනවා මේ ප්‍රශ්නගත වෙච්ච ඖෂධ සාම්පල ගේන්න කලින් කිසි විටක රසායනාගාර පරීක්ෂාවට ලක් කළා නැහැ.
Indian pharmacopoeia එක
Why was Indian pharmacopoeia ever allowed in Sri Lanka? The only explanation we can identify is the government's attempt to claim reduced medicine prices by importing Indian manufactured drugs that do not comply with US or British standards. The Indian Pharmacopoeia Commission does not possess the advanced chemical and laboratory facilities required to conduct standardized testing. A stock of coimoxiclav manufactured by the same company was recalled on the 20th of May 2024, and here is the letter to prove it. However, once the expiration date passed, the ban on the medicine was lifted. This controversy would not have arisen if medicines imported from this company had been subjected to regular testing. During the COVID-19 pandemic, numerous allegations were directed at us regarding antigen test kits and the herbal syrup introduced by a man named Dhammika. As former ministers, we accepted responsibility, and that is why we were criticized. Therefore, no one can be absolved of responsibility in this instance. If a medicine was recalled and advised not to be used, how did it end up being administered to patients?
Now, the IMF Executive Board commenced the meeting to review the government's request for emergency financial assistance amounting to approximately $200 million under the Rapid Financing Instrument a short while ago. The request, which was referred to by the President in Parliament today, was made by the government of Sri Lanka after the widespread destruction caused by Cyclone Ditwa, which severely affected several parts of the country. That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.